welcome to Financial Minds Meet the Experts. I'm Jaime Agostino, your host. On this podcast, we're joined by financial industry experts to talk about topics, trends, and themes that credit union professionals need to know about. Today, I am joined by Erica Johnson, Director of Payments, Ben Braun, Payment Application Analyst, and Kristin Smith, Senior EFT Specialist with Vizo Financial, to discuss ISO 20022. Before we get started, would you mind sharing just a little bit about yourself? Erica, would you mind going first?
Sure, Jaime. I am Erica Johnson, as you mentioned, and I'm the Director of Payments here at Vizo Financial. I've been with Vizo for 18 years now. I'm celebrating that in July. And I've started in the EFT department as a wire specialist. Today, I primarily manage our payment operations and support, focusing on our electronic payments services. I am an accredited ACH professional and a national check professional.
All right. I didn't realize it was 18 years, though. I'm going to be like, wow, Erica, 18 years. Yeah. I feel like you just started the other day. I remember meeting you. Sorry. No. Ben, what about you? Would you mind sharing us a little bit about, telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Ben Braun. In stark contrast to Erica, I am the new kid on the block. I've been with Vizo since about April, midway through April. Of course, I'm payment application analyst, but I have about 10 years in the financial industry with a focus on credit unions.
Okay. All right, Kristin, what about you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name's Kristin Smith. I'm the Senior EFT Specialist here at Vizo, and I've been with the company for 4 years. I've worked in the EFT department the entire time. So if you are one of our member credit unions and you've called in for support for wires, ACHs, foreign checks, positive pay, or cash services, most likely you've talked to me before. I also am an accredited ACH professional, and I'm working towards the NCP so I can match up with Erica.
All right. So, Erica, I'm going to start things with you. What is ISO 20022, and why is it being called the future of financial messaging?
Well, Jaime, before I dive into that question, I thought that you might actually start off with asking how I pronounce it, because pronunciation has been a frequent question that I've heard and seen. In fact, I saw someone post on X, "How do you pronounce this? It's causing significant stress in my life." And that just made me laugh because honestly, I totally get it. You know, I've heard it pronounced ISO 20022, ISO 20022, ISO 20022. There's a lot of variations out there. And honestly, I'm not sure if I'm even saying it right, but I usually pronounce it ISO 20022. And you might hear Kristin and Ben saying it differently than me. And quite honestly, we probably will just start saying ISO to avoid that significant stress in our lives. Anyways, the name sounds technical, and it is technical, but basically ISO 20022 is a new global standard, or as I like to think about it, it's a universal language for how financial institutions will communicate with each other when they're looking to move money around. Today, when financial institutions need to send payment information to each other, they've been using, legacy systems and formats, and these systems have relied on unstructured data. They have fixed length fields, and they use cryptic codes, which makes sending and receiving payments difficult. But with ISO 20022, we're going to see this being changed because we're now going to have the ability to send rich, detailed information about a payment that's going to eliminate ambiguity and errors that we often see today. Now, I think we're seeing it being called the future of financial messaging because of what it can and is already doing in the space of modernizing payments. Many of the old systems being used just cannot evolve like ISO, and that's important as we introduce new payment systems, new payment methods, even as regulations change. We need a standard that can adapt with all these changes.
Okay, so then Erica, would explain to me, how does ISO 20022 differ from other standards like, Swift MT and ISO 15022? I don't even know if I'm saying those right, but how's this one different?
Yeah, well, me either. So we're just going to go with what we say, right? But what I would like to say is that SwiftMT, it's a messaging system that financial institutions all around the world have been using to exchange financial transaction information. And ISO 15022 is one of the standards that's used by the SWIFT network. So the SwiftMT and the ISO 15022, they're kind of the same thing in my mind, because they both make up the messaging system that the SWIFT network has been using. Now, right now, different countries and payment systems or financial messaging systems, they've all have their own message types, their formats, their rules. And like I said earlier, this just makes everything kind of complicated and costly. Remember how I said earlier about it being a universal language? Well, ISO 20022 is being implemented globally because it is designed to eliminate all this fragmentation that we see today. The SWIFT network will play a large role in this by phasing out their old MT messages and making ISO the standard format that's going to be used for all SWIFT messages.
Okay. So then, Kristin, what are the main benefits of adopting ISO 20022 for, banks, credit unions, businesses, as well as consumers?
Yeah, Jamie, that's a great question. And honestly, I've already been asked that this week by some of our credit unions. For starters, this new format allows structured data and increased field sizes, and this sends more information with each of our payments. So having expanded fields will provide greater levels of transparency and create efficiencies for our institutions. And that will result with faster payments for your member, even for yourselves, less errors, and it will increase the accuracy of your institution and possibly your members' cash flow forecasting. And then I'd say, to follow up on that, the new dedicated returns and investigations are also going to be a time saver for you and your users. These are using standardized return codes, and that will diminish delays in applying returned funds back to your members or even yourselves. And you'll also save time responding to requests that you don't understand. So previously, you'd have service messages with the legacy format, and sometimes you'd have to go back and forth between institutions. Now you're going to have that information right from the start, and it'll be a little less murky for you.
Okay.
Another benefit of ISO 20022 will be more precise tracking of your members and your suppliers' business patterns. So I think that will play into better fraud detection for you, as you'll be able to tell if that's normal activity for your members or even businesses that you work with. And then reduced cost is going to be what I think a huge benefit for institutions. And the reduced need for manual work will directly translate to cost savings for businesses. The new format will also reduce the number of different systems that you as an institution will need to maintain. So the cost and time savings are going to be huge bonuses to financial institutions.
All right. Thank you. So, Erica, you said earlier, about richer data in payment. So how does ISO 20022 enable richer data in payments, and why does it matter?
Well, I think that this is something that Kristin mentioned, but ISO 20022 is going to dramatically expand the amount of information that can be included with a payment. I mentioned earlier as well that about the limitations of the legacy systems and the formats, and that's exactly what I think ISO 20022 will get rid of. To me, we can think about it this way. Today, if you're sending a non-ISO 20022 payment, you the payment might just say payment from ABC company, where in the future, ISO 20022 is going to allow for more robust details like payment from ABC company, invoice 250412 for office furniture delivered on July 23rd, 2025, net 30 terms, purchase order 7890. That's a lot more transparency. Wouldn't you agree, Jaime?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think this matters because there's going to be less interpretation needed, which is going to result in more efficient operations for all parties. And as Kristin also touched on regarding the benefits, with all of this richer data, I feel we can expect more automation with the processing of these payments. And I also think that we're going to see enhanced fraud detection because there will be more data points to analyze and identify for potential fraud.
Okay. Well, based on that fraud detection you're mentioning, Kristin, how could ISO 20022 improve the transparency and this fraud detection and compliance in the financial system?
Yeah, so Erica gave us a great segue into that question. The data that's moving with the transactions enables a lot more sophisticated monitoring systems to identify suspicious transactions and with greater accuracy. So with that comes improved compliance processes. And with all that structured data, it's anticipated that we're going to see a decrease in false positives or false alarms in our OFAC monitoring. The data is going to allow us to distinguish between possibly a street name in your wire versus a country name or entity or a person's name from a vessel. And Jaime, I'm not sure if you've ever cleared an OFAC, but if you have, if you send a wire to Maria, she's going to hit for a vessel. And if you're sending a wire to North 3rd Street, that's going to hit for an entity called Nord. So I think over time, we'll see a lot more of that decrease. That takes me back to my cost-saving benefits and my time-saving benefits, as you're not going to have to manually work these OFAC reviews. Organizations can improve their audit trails thanks to ISO's ability to track payments, their purpose codes, their intermediary institutions, and their original instruction references throughout the payment journey. And then that brings me to the fact that there's no truncating of the message fields. And Erica touched base on that a little bit. Since we're retaining that data, that could have all been lost with our old format. These expanded fields, they're going to allow us to move the data through the payments natural flow. And with that, there's no risk of losing important information that could have helped in monitoring fraud. So I think these are all great tools for your institution's fraud monitoring and their compliance.
All right. Well, Ben, I feel like we need to bring you into the conversation. So who's adopting ISO 20022 right now, and where are we in this global rollout?
Yeah, so most financial institutions have taken a lot of measures and already starting that adoption process for ISO 20022. For example, regarding SWIFT, we're currently existing in a coexistence period with ISO and SWIFT, and they're aiming to complete their migration at around November of this year. Now, when they do complete that migration, SWIFT will require all messages to be in the ISO format. Now, regarding SWIFT, they do claim that more than 40% of their total daily traffic are already using the ISO 20022 format, with 180 countries sending and 220 receiving, including Switzerland, China, India, Japan, with the European Central Bank and the Euro T2 beginning their migration earlier in 2023. So this has been a long time coming. It is important to note that regarding messaging, regarding ACH specifically, NACHA offers an ISO 20022 mapping tool to convert the ISO and has gone on record stating that they have an ISO integration strategy as opposed to a conversion strategy, meaning that both formats are going to exist for now.
Okay. What's the timeline for then the U.S. and other major markets to fully switch to ISO 20022, Ben?
Yeah. So as of July of this year, the Clearinghouse, the Federal Reserve, and FedNow are all using ISO 20022. As mentioned before, SWIFT is finalizing their migration in November for the US. So other countries that mostly use SWIFT will generally follow that timeline as well.
Okay. Follow up to that, Ben, how are financial institutions then preparing for this ISO 20022?
Yeah. So institutions are preparing by completing technology and infrastructure upgrades, core system changes to handle the new data structure for ISO 20022, testing and migration planning, training for staff, and just overall organizational readiness.
Okay.
Now, I did want to make a special note that given that FedWire just completed their migration, we'd recommend all of our users or just users in general to check out the FedWire website. There's a treasure trove of information, frequently asked questions, and they have a dedicated page on implementation. So we feel that a lot of people could find that useful.
Oh, great. Well, Ben, if you don't mind, after this, send me that link and I'll make sure that I tag that in the podcast so we can make sure that we're sharing that resource.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Erica, how should companies think about integrating ISO 20022 into their payment or treasury systems?
Yeah, so for anyone that's looking to integrate ISO 20022 into their payment and treasury systems, I personally think the key thing here is to take a phased approach rather than trying to look at everything and do everything all at once. It's important to understand what payment types and systems are already adopting ISO 20022. And I would say engage with, your financial institutions to find out what their migration plans and timelines might look like. I'd also suggest looking for integration that offers real-time processing and takes advantage of the security features and the transaction insights that might be integrated within these systems. Specifically, I would say for credit unions themselves, I would suggest working with your core provider and your payment processors to understand and assess what ISO capabilities already are available or exist. To me, the bottom line is that integrating ISO 20022 is about leveraging the global standard to deliver the kind of personalized and transparent service that credit unions have built their reputation on.
All right. So one of the, hot topics or phrases I constantly hear is cross-border payments. So Kristin, how could ISO 20022 lay the groundwork for more efficient cross-border payments or real-time settlements?
Yeah, Jaime, since this is a uniform message format, ISO 20022 improves global interoperability, which should enhance efficiencies. The ISO format is being used for almost all payment types, from ACH to instant payments. So now, instead of complicated and time-consuming integrations for each payment type and the need for multiple file formats, institutions can send their payments in a single format for routing via multiple payment rails. So the ISO messaging standards are being adopted by all payment systems, and that will lead to seamless integration in the future. So speaking of the future, if a country launches a new instant payment scheme available for cross-border payments, it can immediately be made available for institutions. And then this formatting has the potential to open new payment options for institutions, and allowing them to benefit their members with very minimal added work. Again, going back to my cost-saving benefits from earlier. And the institutions can expand their payment offerings and boost their competitiveness. So it will require minimal development work. Institutions that were early adopters of ISO, they were able to expand their payment offerings within just a matter of weeks. So that's great news for institutions. And then that allowed them to increase their revenues pretty quickly. So I think all of these are positive changes, and we as a team are very excited to see where ISO goes in the future.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me. Erica, any final thoughts for our listeners today on ISO 20022?
Sure, Jamie. And I just want to say thank you for inviting us to the podcast. What I'll end with is that I think ISO 20022 represents a huge shift. And we shouldn't look at this as just, another technology upgrade. I think it's really about bringing the entire global financial system into the modern era. And credit unions are perfectly positioned to take advantage of it. If listeners out there have any questions, we are all here and happy to help them navigate their ISO journey.
All right, wonderful. Thank you all for joining me today. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules. And this episode of Financial Minds, it's brought to you by Vizo Financial's blog. Did you know that Vizo Financial has a blog? It's true. The blog consists of articles written by Vizo Financial experts on staff as well as our partner organizations. The blog covers topics all credit unions need to know about, including the economy, cybersecurity, payments, leadership, DEI, and so much more. New articles are released on a weekly basis, and you can even subscribe to the blog to have them sent straight to your email. To learn more, visit our resources pages of the website at www.vfccu.org. As always, thanks for listening and make it a great day.